Welcome into the Energy Tech Podcast. I am your co-host, Mike Flores, right here in the heart of Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, right inside the OpSite Energy Control Center. And it has been a long time coming to bring in our guests. Right now with us, joining us from Neeve, Mr. Bill Bane and Jerry Reeves. Guys, it's good to have you here right on the show. It's been a long time. Really glad to have you guys. And, you know, before we even dive into what we're going to talk about and do some intros on Neeve, I really want to get a good idea of what you guys have been up to. And here's what I mean. You know, Bill, you've worked with us in the past. You've been in the IoT space, the industrial space. And I say this, but I feel like you essentially been pulled out of your retirement comfort to do something really profound with Neeve. And I want to hear what that is.
That's an interesting way to put it. I won't disagree. I'm looking at your wall of the Rogues Gallery up there. I know a lot of those guys. It's super nice to be here, Mike, so thanks for inviting me.
Yeah.
Pulled out of retirement. First of all, I have a great life.
Yeah.
And I was yanked out by a phone call 6 or 8 months ago.
Okay.
My next call, after these guys called me, was to this guy, the smartest guy I know in industrial automation. We checked him out hard. And now I have an opportunity. It's kind of wild that I get this opportunity the second time, 10, 12 years later, to bring new, updated, modern technology to the same group of people that I've come to know and love.
Yeah.
So that's what's going to get me out of bed. Technology keeps evolving, and now we have modern technology to bring. So that's what got me up.
Awesome. And now you've again, I say join forces, man, with probably one of the great forces in the space, Jerry. Jerry, you've been on the show before, but I think right now you're positioned with the Neeve team. I want to know what you're going to do with Neeve and what kind of expertise you're bringing, because I really enjoy it. But most of all, I want to hear from you, man. Like how you're going to help the space, man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Mike, and you know, it's been a while since I was on the Energy Tech Podcast again or earlier, and it was a lot of fun last time. So I'm looking forward to the next 45 minutes. But Bill's right. He gave me a call shortly after he got his and said, "Hey, we got to take a look at this." And when we talked about it, the thoughts that were running through my head were, if this is exactly as he describes, we got to go engage all the same friends that we talked about before, because this is the next step. This is the next evolution, right? There's so many characters that we know in so many different industries that they're combining software, connections, remote access, security to try and get things done. And it's almost like, as you said, Bill, it's a second calling to say, hey, we're stepping back in to see if we can make it even easier this time. So that's what we're going to talk about today. It should be a lot of fun.
Yes. And so, you know, one of the things that I know is that you guys are bringing Neeve to the space. And when I think of Neeve, I don't put it in the same category as a lot of products that are out there. And I'll name them because they exist. You know, there's the Exxons of the world. That's IXON. There's Tazibox. There's other products that promise this edge. I wouldn't even say edge. Really what it is a device. It's there. And everyone thinks in terms of a device as the solution. But I think right now, Neeve, in the minds of, you know, Bill, you articulate this really well, and I want you to articulate what Neeve really is, what it's doing, and then bring in SASE. That's, I think, what I want to hear about, too.
Yeah. Well, we will talk about all that, and I want to start by saying your industry, Mike, you know, Jerry and I have been in all the industries: traffic automation, building automation, industrial automation, water, wastewater, SCADA, the whole thing.
Right.
Your industry over the years has done the best job, in my opinion, attracting A players. Not all industries have the marketing speak to say, come here, Mr. Smart Guy.
Right.
So this particular industry A, has A players, B, can consume what I'm about to tell them.
Right.
All right? There's a lot of industries where you have to really reduce things to the lowest common denominator to get your point across.
Right.
So what I'm going to introduce today is something new. 10, 12 years ago, we're bringing yet another set of tools. In that case, it was TossiBox out of Oulu, Finland.
Right.
And it was great. For the time, 2012, 2014, VPNs were primary. It was a set of tools where the OT was operating independent of the IT.
Right.
All right? Jer, you would hear stories. I bet there's people on this call who have literally tiptoed past the IT office and go and hung a modem somewhere so they can get access to something.
Right.
That was the state of the industry 10, 15, 20 years ago, and I bet it's still happening. Dude, remember the time we were in a mattress factory? They had a laptop sitting there,
Right.
all right, with an open event of TeamViewer just sitting there. We're going, wait, this is what you got here? So
Right.
this is 10, 12 years ago.
Right.
What's happened now is IT went, wait, this whole thing, PLCs, VFDs, the whole pumps and all that, they got interested in that. OT said, wow, we're now being asked to do a lot more. We're being asked to do a lot with data. It's just not remote access to go adjust my Rockwell PLC.
That's right.
There's something more happening here. We're being asked to do that. So OT took uptime as primary, cybersecurity as secondary. IT was always cyber first, uptime second.
Right.
Now, all this time, a decade later, I said this to somebody the other day, IT and OT, while their networks aren't coming together, culturally in the lunchroom, they are. The professions understand the value of each.
Right. Well, I think not just that, Bill, but I think, Jerry, you can attest to this, but in the OT space now, if I just took OT as a whole, I think what you're seeing now is you're seeing the edge level computing power that is expected from the field. So it's no longer, hey, I've got a PLC with, 500 tags. It's not that anymore. It's how can we take several PLCs at my plant? How can I compute that? And if I decide, if something happens and, my cloud network goes down or I lose, my connection to AWS, I'm still computing at the edge. I'm still bringing value. When we're reconnected, I'll give you back the data. But at the end of the day, you're right. They're being asked to do more. They're being asked to show more value at the edge that they weren't doing 10 years ago. And now that is the case in the edge. Would you agree with that, Jerry?
I think it's a confluence of two things. I think it's enterprises are asking more from the edge.
Yeah.
Right? They need more of that data for their enterprise to continue to be competitive or gain an even further competitive advantage. But we're also seeing more and more of these devices being capable.
Yeah.
You're right. We went from timer relay to smart PLCs, and we had a PLC with an Ethernet port, and you got your 500 tags.
Right.
Easy peasy. Now you have connected pressure transmitters. You have connected VFDs. You have all these other, we call them sensors, right? That are smart, enabled, and networked and connected to provide more data faster. Having to pump all that to the cloud, and only the cloud, has a whole list of issues.
Right.
What we found, fortunately, and we've watched this over time over the past few years, is a lot of our favorite players in the software space have developed edge applications.
Right.
To help change that balance and load. And we're going to talk a little bit about how Neeve enables that over the next few minutes. But that is one of the most exciting things that kind of brought me over to Neeve was, hey, what do we do on the edge from a compute standpoint, and how does it better enable our engagement with the automation and sensors that power our enterprises?
Yes. So with that, Bill, talk to us about Neeve. Honestly, you put this out there already, what it's bringing to the table in terms of the OT space and its integration. I wouldn't say integration. I don't know if it's more like a marriage or what, but you have this IT placed with OT now, and it's almost, to me, it's more than blurred. It's almost like this is a necessity, I would say, in that sense.
Right. With what executives are asking for these days, data-driven insights, I'm going to say it, SASE, Secure Access Service Edge. Some call it SASE, some call it SASE. Jerry hates the term. What it is the best of enterprise IT.
Right.
This was established 10, 12 years ago. The best of enterprise IT now built for the OT.
Right.
So that, Mike, you've got a single, unified, walled-off data plane.
Right.
Compute at the edge, compute in the cloud, cloud agility, zero trust remote access. You're not keeping up with a bunch of remote access agents on everybody's computer. A unified edge cloud data plane. How would you add to that, Jer?
Yeah, and I think that architecture is what is enabling this next evolution of what we're seeing in OT.
Right.
And a lot of people are already in this space. Now they're doing it intentionally with several different vendors because they recognize the value.
Right.
What Neeve brings is, as Bill said, that unified space that allows you to bring the connectivity coupled with secure edge compute and those multiple pathways to the cloud computes as needed as well to enable those other enterprise applications. Being able to interconnect that entire suite of capability
Right.
allows enterprises to engage that sensor data faster
Right.
for those analytics, for those historians, for ultimately the decisions that power their businesses forward. Okay?
Yeah.
And that's, at the end of the day, that's where the money's made.
Well, I
And
think
that's what drives those decisions.
Well, you said something interesting, and my brain always leans on this. I've been in IT, and I found my home in OT, and it's the clients that I help and work with. And so I do spend lots of time in both camps. I spend a lot of time with, the IT group, an executive team member that's translating that. And then you have this OT person that's also translating some value. And one of the things that I've learned that was the common thread in between those two spaces is the VPN. It's always this idea that, well, I've got to set up my tunnels. I've got to be able to do X, X, and X. And I think what I'm hearing, what I've seen so far with Neeve and Bill, I want to talk about this, is actually bringing death to the VPN with this kind of platform and solution. Do you agree with that?
Well, it's tough for Mr. VPN
Yeah, do you have tissues, Mike?
to say
I
that,
need a little.
okay? Having brought a really badass automated VPN to industry 12, 13 years ago.
Yes.
So I'm not saying it. You're not saying that. It's NIST that's saying that. It's CISA that's saying it's time to move on towards a zero trust approach
Yes.
for cybersecurity and everything. So
Yes. So what they're saying is, hey, with Neeve, you're not just solving the attack vector of remote access, but you're doing a lot more than that, right, Jerry? I mean, I think there's a lot more that you're doing besides that. So kind of help us demystify this secure access service edge. I really want to get a deeper explanation, talk about some of the things that you're doing, not just remote access. I don't think that's really that's not the only thing you're unpackaging here.
No, I think in every data space, especially the ones in the industries that we play in, you absolutely must have remote access.
Right.
And I've said for years, I mean, the whole reason you get data is to understand your operation, its health, its productivity, and that sort of thing. But when the data tells you something or something goes out of bounds, usually your first tool is remote access.
Right.
So you absolutely must have it as part of your overall operational stack. What we're seeing and what we're trying to promote here with Neeve is that remote access no longer needs to be a VPN. In fact, Bill's right. I mean, cybersecurity evolution is pushing us towards true zero trust access. And the good news is, Mike, is that the automation components and sensor components that we're seeing at the edge are much more compatible with those zero trust
Right.
connections than they were in the past.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, the thing that brought me to TazzyBox was it was the best automated VPN solution.
Right.
Hands down. I mean, pulled me out of the integration space into the sales space because it was so awesome, right? But again, I also had a bag phone for my first cellular phone,
Yeah.
right? Zero trust and the true IT definition of that is rapidly moving in the OT space, and the OT space is ready for it.
You're right. And now that you say that, it brings me to think about something because IT loves zero trust, but OT hates the complexity. Okay, like that's the reality. Regardless of whatever space you're in, manufacturing, water, wastewater. I mean, there's still some. I call it complexity, and the reason I say that is because the person that's in IT, that person, when I go look at OT, it's there's a different element in terms of their training and their priorities. They're not the same. My training's different. My priorities are different, which means I want something that is less complex. I want something that when we plug in, great. I love all the edge computing, and we're going to talk about a few key things that I want to bring up. But at the end of the day, how is Neeve going to handle that? How does it handle that complexity if I'm the OT guy?
I'll take that one, Jer.
Yeah, kick it off, Bill.
I'll kick it off at least.
You kick it off.
Think about it like this. You log in from your browser
Yeah.
to your bank accounts, to your stock portfolio,
Yes.
to everything. All right? But in OT space, you got to have an agent and a VPN and something like that and do all this and that to get to something. Complexity, gone. Single sign-on, browser-based, access to this new technology that now enables that. Oh, by the way, same thing with legacy technology. So the complexity's gone. It might seem complicated, but Neeve handles that. So browser-based, single sign-on, add to that, Chair.
Now we'll add to that, being the OT guy here.
Yeah.
But there are cases where you're not going to use browser-based to engage a piece of automation or something.
Sure.
Okay, I'm an old Siemens guy.
Yeah.
TIA Portal. Let's go. Let's hear for TIA Portal. But you have TIA Portal. You have Studio 5000. You have these applications that are specifically built for particular automation platforms.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Neeve hasn't left that out. That is understood that has to be part of the environment. That's not going away anytime soon. But what they do is they enable the zero trust connection across which that application resides on your PC, just like the browser does, right? But
Yes.
the zero trust connection to the device, not necessarily the network, to the device to make that change, right? Heightens that level of security beyond where the VPN used to be, right?
Yes.
And that's where, again, it's an evolution. This isn't the end-all be-all. We'll be having this conversation 5 years from now on whatever's next,
Right.
right? But this is what's next, and it's what's being asked of the industries by our cyber experts.
Yes. And so having said that, what is the love? Are you getting any love for Neeve from cyber experts? I mean, who's checking the boxes saying, Bill, who's checking the boxes saying this meets my love feeling for the product, regardless of whether I'm a CIO, right? Or I'm a CTO or I'm a CISO, right? So it sounds like with
It's the
Neeve,
perfect question.
Yeah.
It's the perfect question. Here's why. Remember what I said earlier? This was developed by enterprise IT.
Yeah.
So the people signing off on this are the CISOs, the CTOs, the CIOs, because they're already familiar with it. They've built this for their IT enterprise.
Right.
They understand the value of zero trust, SD-WAN, CASB, all of that. All right. They understand that the Purdue model had a place in time, and it's not like that's going away, microsegmentation, everything else, but we are safely and securely collapsing it together,
Right.
IT and OT, now that data is primary.
Right. Yes, and I think you're right, and I want to put this to you, Jerry, because one of the things that I told we did an episode where we're talking about predictions for 2026, and one of them is edge computing. That's going to be a big deal for sure for the year. I think they're spending money. Everyone's spending money, but I think one of the biggest things that came out of 2025, Jerry, was the unified namespace. Okay, and all that is placing. Typically, you have your source of truth, right? So I have my source of truth. Typically, I've been a big disciple and preacher of you're going to take that edge data. We're going to uncomplicate it using Sparkplug-B. We're going to take that data into the broker. From the broker, we're going to have multiple subscribers, right? So, and when you're going to do that, you're going to do that with your typical TLS encryption. You might have a cloud subscriber. You might have products like MaintainX as a subscriber. And it sounds like, when I was running my head through some of the things about Neeve, but it sounds like Neeve fits that because it actually acts as a way and provides some key elements of containerization to help on the edge while at the same time giving you the security, right? Is that a fair assessment? It
is a fair assessment. And I've always been a big fan of hardware, right?
Yeah.
It is, no one's figured out how to plug an Ethernet cable into software. And everybody who's engaged me in my career has heard me say that, but it's true, right? Hardware is what allows us to ingest all of this information,
right,
and engage the networks, engage the technology, so on and so forth. Compute at the edge is the next logical step. And so within the Neeve platform, you do have a piece of hardware at the edge.
Sure.
It's industrialized. It's DIN-rail mountable. It's 24-volt DC, blah, 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 blah. Everything that our edge technicians are going to want to see.
Right.
But what it is, it's an encrypted operating system that has containerization.
Right.
And we have an application, for a better word, an application store of different partners that can put their apps with one click right there at the edge to now be part of your operational space.
Yeah.
So things like our friends at Ignition, which we're an Ignition partner just recently with those guys. Now, one click, Ignition Edge is there, and now you're starting to engage your data right there at the edge in that compute, making it part of those data spaces that are part of your operational architecture.
Yes. Bill, who else is on that? I mean, who else is part of that team on the edge that you can deploy? I mean, there's not just Ignition. It sounds like you guys have a host of partnership there.
Well, we're just getting started. Think about it like this, and I'm going to list a couple of them. You guys will know them. This single data fabric, edge, cloud orchestrated,
yes,
Docker runtime environments. One click, you've got Ignition Edge. One click, you've got Nomi. One click, you've got Autosol. And guys, we're just getting started.
Yeah,
we'll have them all up there at some point.
Yes, and I think again, one of the things that working with myself and Jeff, we've worked with different clients. We typically work from the source of the headache. So we may not look at the enterprise first. Guess what? I'm going to go to the field first. I want to understand. I'm going to work my way backwards from the edge. That's just what I believe, because that's where I'm going to find two things. I'm going to find the shadow leadership. Shadow leadership is anybody that's doesn't have the title that knows what's going on. I don't know how many clients I've been to where I go, hey, you're the operations manager, and they're gone for the day. Oh, you don't go talk to Joe Blow or Hector. He's the he's the OT automation tech. He knows what's going on. And guess what? I go to Hector. He knows exactly what's happening. He's my shadow leader. But then you also have the things you want to prevent, which is your shadow IT. Those are the ones that say, I still want to bring my own device. I still want to make connection types. And in saying that, give me the simplicity of Neeve, because you're going to suit yourself to both those types of folks. That's what I think, is that we're talking about easy deployment. When we talk about easy deployment, what does that look like, Jerry or Bill?
Yeah. So I think at the edge, because really that's That's our most difficult deployment areas, right?
Yeah.
You're out in the field, you're out in different temperatures, you name it, right? As I mentioned earlier, we're bringing industrial hardware. So this isn't just off the shelf or a box from Best Buy or something like that. We're bringing industrial hardware
Right.
with the ability to connect by DIN rail or panel mount or 24-volt DC power, as I said, temperature rated, class 1 div 2, all the ratings you would expect for this industrial environment, because that's what you need. It has to be reliable. It has to be secure. It has to be capable to do its job over the long term.
Yeah.
Now, that's at the mechanical and electrical and environmental level. At the networking level, outbound 443.
Yes.
That's it. Outbound 443. So we're talking about an outbound only port and only port 443 that's usually reserved for encrypted HTTPS and other TLS type traffic.
Right.
That's it. So from an IT ask perspective, when you're dealing with that field unit or that particular site,
Yes.
and you have to request from IT connectivity, outbound 443 should be one of the most simple asks in the world.
Yeah.
Right?
And so what you're really saying is, hey, listen, IT admin out there, this makes it capable for you to check the box and say, listen, we're not asking you to control every firewall. Just know that with this, that's what you're really getting, right?
Correct.
You're getting that protection.
That's right, 100%.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the things that I'm glad you brought that up, because that leads me to my next piece, and what I want to ask here is that from the product, easy to deploy. It sounds like easy deployment, but you also have what I call this small. Hey, I'm a small producer in West Texas. I have a few PLCs here. I want to integrate this product. I really want to use it, not just for security or remote access, but for all the other reasons that I can deploy for edge compute, even at small levels for my wellheads and what have you. But it sounds like, is this thing built for both small and the enterprise? I mean,
let me take that.
Yeah, like tell me about that, because I want to make sure that people know whether it fits, whether I'm an enterprise or I'm small.
There's so much to talk about right there. I'll directly answer your question. It's designed for enterprise, and I don't care if you have one site. With one site, you now have a fully encrypted edge, one site, cloud, data plane.
Yeah.
That sounds fancy, but that's remote access. That's data to wherever you want it to go.
Right.
So I don't care if that's one site or 150 sites where you want to make operational upgrades, because this is a software-defined plane.
Yes.
All right, you're walled off in a beautiful software bubble. You can update 150 sites with a couple clicks. So yeah, enterprise and small operators.
Yeah. And while at the same time, guys, is it fair to say, hey, this even with legacy equipment, I mean, you still have some capability, right? Even if it's legacy. I mean, in terms of just, it sounds like you still have the coverage on protocols, even modern protocols. Is that fair?
Still have coverage on protocols, absolutely. And then because we have edge compute, right, technologies like Autosol and others allow us to bring in some of those legacy protocols, maybe with downstream hardware as well, to engage those legacy devices,
Yes.
right? So we're not having to worry about our 15-year-old PLC being obsolete just because you put in Neeve. It's still there. We're now better enabling the software and tools at the edge to bring those guys into the fold. And it's important to understand that even if you're talking about the hardware at the edge,
Right.
that's just the one piece to aggregate the field side and engage the cloud side as well. All of this, the entire Neeve ecosystem is orchestrated via web,
Yes.
right? So you're logging in, single sign-on, you're going into an orchestration page, you're looking at your entire Neeve architecture and either deploying apps, adding new nodes, connecting new clouds,
Right.
whatever it is that tailors the environment to your operational needs, and that's all within a web-based interface.
Let me language that slightly differently. I love the way you said that. I'm going to make it simpler. Regardless of whether you just acquired a new company with all legacy technology, regardless if you have a mishmash of new and old,
Right.
you don't have to touch it. Now, with a full SASE platform, you're modernizing your entire ecosystem overnight.
Yeah.
Right? You're bringing more cloud and data agility, even with your legacy systems.
Yes.
It's an instant modernization.
And then on the other flip side of that, guys, it sounds to me like you have some great avenues for container orchestration, and how that works. So you mentioned earlier, you did mention a few great partnerships, which is Ignition, which typically lives with the Ignition Edge licensing. And then you've got Autosol, we'll say Nomi, which is a great one. So tell me about that. In terms of container orchestration, you're saying, hey, not just one click, we can drop those features right in there but things like Ignition or Autosol, right?
Right. Over the past few months, when Bill and I were working on the 2026 launch year, we picked a few key players that we had previous relationships with, and we knew were positive players in the industry. So Autosol, Ignition, Nomi, and those guys. And so we've been speaking to them. Node-RED's another one. We've been speaking to them over the past few months, and we were able to very quickly put them into our container library.
Yes.
The container library is an open space. Anybody can bring any container that they might need to the Neeve platform for deployment. Now, our container orchestration is our own.
Right.
And we do that because our operating system's fully encrypted.
Yeah, tell me about that right there.
Yeah, so we give instructions on how to onboard your containers so that they are able to be onboarded within the encryption infrastructure we have part of the operating system. All right, so we're not using a third-party orchestrator or something that might be a global orchestrator like Portainer and some of the other ones.
Right.
Ours is part of Neeve, but remember, we have to stay within the secure envelope of the Neeve architecture.
Right.
Right? That is paramount. That's why we have so much buy-in from CISOs and others. So we have enabled that within the Neeve ecosystem to make it as easy as possible for our customers to bring in what's next. And to me, that is the next fun 2 years. You go to shows, you see a new piece of software, maybe it solves a problem that has been plaguing you for a year or two out in the field, and you're like, you know what, I want to try that. Boom, drop it in, and you're like, problem solved. And now you've licensed that software from that company, and they're making the next greatest thing.
Wow. So coupled with that, one thing I saw you guys have made mention of also too is the app marketplace. I think that is something that's coming to light now, even with Neeve, right? You've got an app marketplace. You can, not just adapt, but, work with these different platforms and containerize them, work with them. I think that's a plus right there. So I guess what I'm saying is that you've got lots of products that played to the OT legacy. And what you've done here is made something that is unique while at the same time is typical. In case, I'm sure a lot of people know on the show, you don't. I'm a father of 8. My oldest son is 32 years old, and the youngest is 18. So I really get the gamut of thoughts concerning the use of technologies. All right, and so when we were talking about Neeve, some of these questions came from the ease of use. There's a digital expectation that comes from a Gen Zer that is not the same as my oldest, you see. And that I'm just bringing this to, it's a reality. And so when I think of Neeve, 2 things. Tell me about the marketplace. Tell me that, hey, Mike, there is some simplicity. And then to an old guard, what happens with that data encryption and how well is that secure? So that's a 2-part question.
Yeah, so it's really straightforward. When you are in your orchestration space, say you're at site 347, You grab that edge node, you bring it up into your primary screen, and you navigate to the marketplace. You click the apps that you want and hit deploy. And it'll push those right into that edge node that then you can access usually by their web port, right? So you hit the IP address that it's assigned to, hit the web port, and you're there, right? It's that easy. It's as if you would have put that container on a straight IPC.
Yes.
But probably a few steps simpler.
Yeah.
Because
and more secure.
And because you're within the encrypted OS, it's much more secure.
Yeah.
Usually when you're just deploying a straight Linux with Docker on it, you haven't encrypted that whole thing yet. Right? So all that is already wrapped in.
Got it.
And so we handle both sides. You know, as you said, the Gen Zers, I want to be able to point click, make it happen just like my iPhone. And yes, we will soon be to the day that we can do that. But we cannot jeopardize the cyber side on the way there.
That's right.
So we'll get there. And again, Neeve will evolve just like our industries evolve. But this is a sea change in how we're looking at the OT environment and our ability to deploy the applications and infrastructure needed to make these data-driven decisions.
Yeah. You know, the last thing, because we're coming close on time. Trust me. In case you didn't know, this is a series. So we really want you to like and subscribe, and we want comments. So when you're watching and listening, like and subscribe to the Energy Tech Podcast, and throw us some questions. And I do want to talk a bit. One thing that struck me is sometimes there's the idea that, we have our cloud platform, but lots of clients, especially in the industrial space, there's a multi-cloud effort. Not everything's residing in my AWS portfolio. I might have components that are, hey, I have an Azure application that I'm testing. I might have, my AWS architecture that I'm working with, or guess what? We have something that's deployed to GCP, and we're looking at doing something in Looker rather than doing it in Power BI. And that may mean we probably want to set something up in GCP, but I think there's plenty of support on Neeve for deploying to multi-cloud, where sometimes also, and Jerry, you may know this, but there might be FedRAMP requirements for your product, or rules surrounding where data goes, meaning it could go to a federal agency, a state agency, a county agency, where the multi-cloud setup is important. And I think, speak to that a little bit in terms of its connectivity to multi-cloud.
Yeah, that was the other big piece that brought me over to Neeve.
Yeah.
Right? It was really my first opportunity to play with a platform that could support multi-cloud.
Yeah.
Right? Our industry is all about the tinkerers that try and figure out these problems, right?
Yes.
It's not just software at the edge. It's not just changing out a piece of automation. You're exactly right. There might be some sort of software application within GCP that isn't in Azure, or maybe I want to try GCP because it's cheaper.
Yes.
Or maybe I want to use Access Group because they run VMware Cloud, and I'm more comfortable there. Or maybe I've got to divide between cloud locations and a couple on-prem data centers. On-prem data centers are still a thing.
Yes.
The goal of Neeve, and it's not even goal, the reality of Neeve is we don't care where your data needs to go. If you need 4 different locations, cloud locations, 2 on-prem and 2 in the cloud, we can support that multi-cloud setup from the same node out in the field.
Yes.
No problem.
I like the idea, Jer, of moving from hub and spoke to mesh.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Brilliant.
You're no longer beholden to a hub and spoke environment. You now create your own secure mesh environment.
That's right.
Yes. And I got one final question for you guys, because we're about to close this episode out. And both of you have done what I call leaps. You leaped. Whether that was you, Bill, coming out, of this phase of, hey, Mike, I'm relaxed where I'm at. Jerry, you and I worked directly. You were hitting the path here, at the former company. But what's your why right now? What you're doing? Like, you're doing this, and why?
Yeah. I have 2 whys. One, I'm an old broken down athlete, and I can only play so much pickleball.
Okay. Yeah.
But two, I'm a curious, I'm full of wonderment, and I love to serve the people in my world.
Yeah.
I love to serve. That, Michael, is what gets me out of bed.
Got you. How about you, Jerry?
Yeah, it's similar to Bill's, but we, over the past 8 years, we had such a rush watching this industry evolve and evolve quickly.
Yeah.
I'm old enough to remember old timer relays, and then when automation got an Ethernet port. I mean, we're just now ramping up with data space and compute.
Yeah.
And it's a ride I don't want to get off of.
Yeah.
So now I wasn't looking for, hey, here's what I was doing. Let me just find the next best thing. When Bill called me, I realized that this was a monumental step forward for enabling our OT enterprises to do what they need to do. I was like, that's the next ride. So
Yes.
I went from one roller coaster to the next, and it's already off like a shot. So we spent the past 3 months prepping for this 2026 launch, and I cannot tell you how much excitement we've had from the conversations with our industry so far.
Wow. So that is, in a nutshell, this is Neeve empowering and enabling that OT space. I mean, that's one piece. And the other part is bringing that IT capability around it as well. Beautiful. So that's a big deal. Yeah. With that, guys, we're going to close this episode out. Don't forget to follow us, like and subscribe, pose those questions, and we want to see you back because we've got more to unpack with the guys from Neeve. Thank you again for being on the show, Jerry Reeves, Bill. Great to have you guys on the show. I'm your co-host, Mike Flores, with the Energy Tech Podcast. Come back and see us, and don't like and subscribe.
Good job, Mike.